25.
All right, we are now recording. So I'm going to call the Citizens Advisory Committee on Policing Policies to order. And we have an agenda, a few things we want to go over for this organization meeting. We're going to start with a welcome by myself and by Council Member Son Draper Berry. And I'll begin. First of all, welcome and thank you all for agreeing to serve on this committee. It's an important issue, the review of our use of force policy, the senseless killing of George Floyd and of others have reached a critical mass in this country where we have agreed that more must be done, and that's why we're here. I went ahead and signed a pledge on behalf of the city with the My Brother's Keeper to review the use of force policies here in the city, to take public input and to make it a community process. So I'm delighted that so many of you have asked to be a part of that. That isn't necessarily the full scope of this committee, but it is a priority item because it is something that part of the pledge is to do that within 90 days. Mm-hmm. So, with that, the thought then is to have a review of the use of force policy with a recommendation, a short written recommendation made to the city and to the police department in particular as to what changes, if any, ought to be made to the city's use of force policy, and have that done by September. So that is certainly one goal of the committee. There are other goals that we could have, and with that in mind, I would turn it over to Mrs. Berry to say a few words and talk about that as well.
I'd like to thank everybody for agreeing to be part of this committee. I'm one who came up in the 60s, and so when all of this started happening, I just believe that is one reason why I've been put in this position this year, because when I saw what happened to George Floyd, it just took me back years, and it was very emotional at first, but I also believe that we live in a small city that I really have learned to love, and I have been embraced by all of the council people, and I believe that all of the council people in University Heights and our mayor definitely want the best for our city. And I also feel good about the direction we want to go. And I feel like we can be an example for other small cities like University Heights. I also was part of a group of councilwomen, African-American councilwomen, and we wrote a letter to all the legislators in the state of Ohio and came up with 8 points. And when I talked to the mayor about this committee, I was going all over the place about all the different things we needed to address. And he helped me think about how we could approach and make a difference one step at a time. And that is the reason why we thought that looking at University Heights' use of force policies and having the citizens do that and would be a great start, and then maybe move into some of the other 8 points that the councilwomen of the state of Ohio wrote. And I'll just tell you a few of them, but I think these points are, it's too vast of a project. So we feel that if we just start with one thing that University Heights has, and then move forward and let you as a committee decide the next direction for the city of University Heights. These 8 points were declare racism a public health crisis, remove discriminative laws such as the Stop and Identify statute, expand statewide medical provisions to provide mental health care regarding race, implement a financial penalty assessment for false calls regarding racial profiling, conduct employment equity training for certified professionals, require an annual accountability analysis of police departments in regards to excessive use of force complaints, implement a decertification process for officers found engaged in egregious actions, and mandate body-worn cameras at all times. And you'll see these 8 points is a large undertaking, and we feel like for University Heights, we really should just start with the policy that University Heights has, and then maybe look at other things in the future. Did I touch on it right, Mayor?
I think so. I think so.
Okay.
Well, you know, something that we ought to do is for anybody who hasn't received it, we should distribute a copy of the letter that you signed with the other 24 African American councilwomen, so that everyone can see what the unified stated goals are that you all signed off on and have asked for movement on both the federal and state level.
Okay.
So, I suggest that distribution be had after this meeting, and I think that will help promote discussing some of those items.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next item on the agenda, I think, would then be to go through introductions of all of our committee members. Not everybody here knows each other, and I think that would be helpful to working together to give everybody the opportunity to introduce themselves and just say briefly why they volunteered for this committee and what they hope to see this committee accomplish. I have a list of the committee members in alphabetical order. So what I'm going to suggest is that we go through and start with Odasha Blue.
But you know, before we do that, Mayor, maybe we should also introduce the committees to those council people or people in the city that are really not part of the committee or not official members of the committee.
Oh, that's a fine idea. We do have some ex officio members of the committee who are here. Our Vice Mayor, Michelle Weiss, is here. Hi, Michelle. Yeah, thank you for being here, as well as Sue Pardee, who is our former Vice Mayor and has been on council for some time, leader here in the city too. Yes, and let's see. I see John's iPhone. Is that John Rock?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm in the car, so I don't have the camera on.
Okay. I had a hunch, though, that it was you. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, let's see. Who else here? Is there anybody else here from council? Okay. All right. That's good. Okay. We were expecting our prosecutor, city prosecutor Stephanie Scalise.
I'm here.
Oh, you are here. There you are.
I am here. Hello.
Okay. Your window didn't indicate your name, so I didn't notice that you were here. But thank you for being here.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. And then I don't know if Lieutenant McCarter made it on or not. Lieutenant. Yes, there he is. Excellent. Okay. Lieutenant McCarter is here in addition to, or in this evening in place of, he's hitting double duty here because Chief Rogers, I mentioned to some of you before everyone was on, he and his wife had a baby yesterday, and he is at home with his wife and family. So he will be joining us at future meetings But Lieutenant McCarter is more than qualified to be part of this discussion, so we're glad to have him here.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right. So, so that said, why don't we go to Odasha Blue?
Hello, everybody. My name is Odasha Blue.
Excuse me.
No, it's fine. It's mispronounced very often. So it is Odasha Blue. I moved literally from across Cedar Road to University Heights 3 years ago. I was born and raised in Cleveland Heights. So I moved to University Heights. I'm currently a science teacher at Cleveland Heights High School, going into my 9th year. As an educator, this is my 8th year in the district. And so the reasons that I wanted to join the committee was because I'm very interested in looking at the intersection between how the community interacts with our students in the district, looking at ways that we can impact that, because the community has a major impact on the way that kids function educationally. So that's one reason that I joined. And I also wanted to look for ways that we can improve the interaction and the students in the district. And then even in the midst with everything that's going on around the country dealing with injustice, I thought it was very important for me to get involved in my own backyard and do something about it, just to see a way to improve and make the city of University Heights better.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Odasha. It's great that you're here, and it's great to have you here in the city, and wonderful knowing that that you are a teacher at Heights, and that you bring all this perspective to the committee. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, going through the list alphabetically. Patty Carlisle. Patty.
Everyone, I'm Patty Carlisle. I've lived on Ashurst Road, first and only house I've ever purchased, for about 15 years now. Grew up in Akron originally. So I actually grew up in a town very much the same size as University Heights, and probably a similar demographic makeup, a bit more white, to be honest. So living in the Heights and Heights adjacent has been a huge education for me. And it's been kind of a coming to grips with my own biases, my own privilege, and I'm trying to use that in a responsible way. What I've been doing for the last several years has been advocacy on the public education side of things. So like Odasha, I'm very much interested in how our community, both on the policing side and the community members in general, are welcoming or not welcoming, or treating our students well or not. So I feel like that sort of very early stuff is very important. So that was a big part of my interest here. And I'm just happy that this conversation is finally being had nationally. And I'm really happy that that University Heights is finally a place where we can have this conversation.
I closed all my windows. Still freezing.
So, thanks. I'm happy to meet everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you, Patty. All right, next up is Ron Collier. Ron.
Hello, I'm Ron Collier. I live on 4446 Silsby. I've lived there for 35 years, my whole life, except for the couple of years I went to college at Bowling Green. I'm a, go Falcons. I'm a teacher's assistant now at Catholic Charities, Rainbow Terrace, Head Start down in the Garden Valley Projects of Cleveland. And I've joined this committee because I'm a longtime resident of the city. And I feel it's important because after everything that happened with George Floyd, also locally with Tamir Rice, I feel that I'm not against police. We know that the cops they have a hard job, and I have everybody works hard, but we need to find some way to meet halfway, because getting angry and other things is not the way. And plus, I hope that we're able to make some change, because this is a good city. I grew up here. I love the diversity of this town and Cleveland Heights, and it's just I want to have people. I want things to be better for the next generation.
Mm-hmm. All right, excellent. Thank you, Ron. Indira Gatlin.
Good evening. My name is Indira Gatlin. I've lived in University Heights for 10 years. I moved here from California, lived in a very large, diverse city. Let's see, I'm interested because I am a mother of 2 African-American sons. in which I've had the talk with how are they supposed to act and respond when they are stopped by the police. But my additional concern is one of my children is autistic. So I do have fears that his interaction with police may not be as positive because he may not respond appropriately. So my vested interest is knowing and understanding what is our city doing in order to train our officers on tactics when they're interacting with individuals with disabilities versus, you know, other issues happening, and just in general, just the use of force policy with all races. So that's why I'm here.
All right, very good, thank you. Okay, Neil Gould.
Hello, I'm Neil Gould. I've been in University Heights for 30 years now. I bought the house in 90, moving from Shaker Heights. And I moved to University Heights. I've lived in Cleveland Heights, Shaker Heights most of the time because we moved here from Pittsburgh in the mid-50s. And my parents built a house in Shaker in the early 60s. And that was an experience in itself. But I moved to University Heights because it's a smaller community. The taxes were about the same as living in Shaker, but because it's a smaller community, it's more responsive. And I wanted to be more involved and have more contact with those who make decisions so that I could wind up in a better role than I had in Shaker. I'm a Shaker High graduate instead of a Cleveland Heights graduate, so you have to forgive me on that one. But I'm looking forward to this committee for many reasons. One is that I think that we're faced with a very difficult challenge here. The issues are not simple. The solutions are not apparent as much as we'd like them to be. And just when I was reading through the documents relevant to this use of force policy, I realized that, first of all, I'm not a lawyer. I'll tell you, I was a businessman whose primary focus was technical publishing, technical writing, and writing manuals and writing software and that sort of thing. And I closed that business a couple of years back. And now I'm just retired and looking forward to helping out with this. But I see it as being a real challenge. I think that the issues are deep. And I'm glad we have some lawyers on hand, and I'm glad we have the representative from the police force on hand, because I think we're going to need every bit of that in order to make any kind of change at all that's meaningful. And I would just like to be able to clarify what we're really trying to accomplish before we go too deeply into this. But that's it.
All right. Oh, well, thank you, sir. Adrian Harden.
Hi, I'm down the street from Mr. Gould. We're down the street neighbors. I've lived on Edgerton for 37.5 years, and I've enjoyed it. I didn't leave. Sometimes the house seems a little too big for me now. My daughters have moved on. I met Sandra years ago when her daughter was in kindergarten, and she asked would my daughter walk with her daughter to Canterbury.
Oh,
so,
yes.
That's why I know that daughter.
Yes, I do remember.
Right, so they used to walk together. So we've been here a lot of years, and I decided as a retired teacher, and I always felt that I like to be heard and see what's going on. I thought I'd try to be part of the solution at University Heights, and that's why I joined.
Very good.
Happy me.
Oh, thank you for being here. Is Kate Holtzheimer on the call? Okay. All right. Then we will skip Kate and go to Joanna Homan. Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Joanna Homan. I do go by Jo, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I've lived in University Heights for the last 2 years.
Thank you. I'm back.
In Cleveland Heights. And before that, I was in Colorado. I volunteered to be on this committee because I wanted to be actively involved in ensuring our community is inclusive and a safe place for everyone to live. After reading through the policies, I hope that the committee can update and provide the residents of University Heights, including police officers, policies that have everyone's well-being in mind and best interest, especially in high stress situations. So thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Thank you for being a part of this. We have Mrs. Hubman, Sheila Hubman, your turn. Okay, we have you muted, so you need to unmute.
Unmute.
There we are.
Am I good?
Yes, we hear you now.
Okay. I'm 79 years old. This is a real adventure for me, but I'm doing it. I had to call somebody on my other landline, but anyhow, I'm Sheila Hubman. I live on Ashers next to Patty Carlisle, by coincidence. We have been in this house since 1965. It's our one and only house. We raised our family here happily. We love University Heights. I come to the council meetings on a regular occasion and say that we stayed in University Heights in our starter home because of the services of University Heights. I especially single out the fire department. They too often transport me in the squad to UH, and I'm treated with such respect. So I love the city, and I want it to go well, and I certainly wouldn't want to see any city employee act inappropriate. I should tell you that my father was police chief of University Heights back in the 50s and 60s. So as a point of reference. And I'm eager to work on this and to see that it goes well. I've volunteered for other committees. I've been active in the city politics on and off since about 1980 or so, I think was my first event. And on and off committees, on and off projects, and I'm happy that I was chosen. Was everyone chosen, Mayor, or were there some rejects?
Nearly everybody was chosen.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and just as a matter of personal reference, the very first city council meeting I ever attended in City Heights, Mrs. Hubman was there, and she gave me the primer on what was going on and who was who and what was what. So I know as well as anybody what a fixture Sheila is here in the city and represents a long time knowledge here. So thank you for being part of this committee.
Now, am I supposed to do something on this phone? Or you can do it for me?
I can do it for you. So
okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Josh Hunt, you're up.
So my name is Josh Hunt, and I've been living in University Heights for about 10 years now. I was born and raised on the west side of Cleveland, and love brought me to University Heights. My wife and I have been married now for 9 years. So I wanted to get involved on this committee because of the national conversation that's happening. And I wanted to, think globally, act locally. It's like, well, here it is. And even though I'm not an attorney or anything like that, I just love the idea of looking at a policy and saying, here's what it is, here's what it should be for everyone's benefit. So I love that idea of improving the quality of the community and improving everyone's safety within it. So I want to do my small part in making the world a better place.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Josh. Is Constance Jefferson on the line? I don't think so. Okay, well, if she comes on, we will come back to her. Next up then is Aaliyah Lawson.
Hi, everyone. My name is Aaliyah Lawson. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am currently a rising senior at Case Western Reserve University, studying psychology and political science on a pre-law track. And I joined this committee because I'm a Heights graduate. I've lived in both Cleveland Heights and University Heights practically all my life. And I really want to learn more about how local government works. And I want to be an avenue for people like me, as in like youth that don't think they can get involved, for getting involved in our local communities. And that's it.
Okay, well, we're delighted to have you here. Thank you for being here. All right, next then is Thekla Long. Okay, we can't hear you. And you don't seem to be muted. Is your microphone?
Oh, here I am.
Okay, we hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Excellent.
All
Yes.
righty. I'm Thekla Long. I have been a resident of University Heights for 27 years. It's from the birth of my children. You know how buying a new house brings on children, and through their departure. And I always tell them, get involved, get engaged, do something, you know, get active. And yet and still I find that I'm not as active as I should be, and I have not been. And so when I looked at this and I thought, this is an opportunity to do something to make a difference for a place that I truly love, because my experiences have been just wonderful with the police here. And so when I see what's happening in other places and the risk to my children, I think I should do something. And as the young man said, the local impact. And so I'm here, and I'm looking forward to the work that we're going to do, and I'm hoping to help in any way or bring something to the committee as best I can.
Very good. Thank you. It's never too late to get involved. We're glad you're here. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Next then is Paul Miller.
Hi, the name is Paul Miller. We're originally from the Boston area. I happened a long time ago to have graduated law school. I've lived here in University Heights over 40 years. So I guess the main question is, why did I volunteer to do this? For any number of reasons. Number one is, I happen to like it here. I never envisioned moving any other place. I thought it was just perfect. Had a perfect library. It was small, had some parks, had some very nice people, and we've enjoyed ourselves immensely. When the opportunity came around in regards to this committee, I said to myself, and over the years, by the way, I've been slightly involved with the city. I said to myself over the years, I've always taken the police for granted. Probably take the firemen for granted too. Unless you come into contact with them, then you don't take them for granted. So what has happened is they've been brought to the forefront. I look at it, as Mr. Gould said, it's a very, very complicated situation we find ourselves in. I don't think there are simple answers by far. I think they're complex answers. And I tend to believe we all bring our biases and we all have them to the forefront sometimes in a very ugly manner. And if I can add to or contribute to make this a better place, that's all I want. I want it to be a better place so that I know in my heart, and not even in my heart, I know that if someone gets stopped, red, white, blue, green, or purple, everybody is treated the same. I want to know that. And I want to go to sleep at night thinking that it happens. So if I can add a little bit to it, that'll be wonderful. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Roger Osgood. Oh,
Roger is muted.
I always do that. I mute myself and forget to unmute myself. So anyway, Roger Osgood, I'm the pastor at Heights Christian Church, which is in Shaker Heights. My wife and I have been city residents for over 35 years, 37 if I'm doing the math correctly. And both of our sons graduated from Heights High School. Part of my work is also I serve as the co-chair of the Anti-Racism Commission of the Christian Church in Ohio, which is our regional body, and have been involved in training and other work through that group. So as a couple people have said, the idea of working locally appealed to me. When I saw this pop up, I thought, well, you know, I can bring some of my background perhaps and to hopefully be some kind of an asset. And we've lived here so long. I'd love to see University Heights get to be an even better place as well. So I'm also hoping that we might, as has kind of been indicated, we might expand beyond just the idea of looking at the use of force policies, but look at other things that impact how, you know, residents of this city are treated, you know, across the board, and how we might perhaps become an anti-racist organization as a city. So thanks.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. Next then is Crystal Pickus.
Hi. Okay, I'm Crystal Pickus, Salent. That's I grew up in South Euclid. I went to Brush. I've lived in UH for the past 8 years. I worked at Monarch Belfair, so I've had some interactions with Shaker and UH police there because half of the building is in Shaker, half the building is in UH. My master's degrees are in social work and nonprofit management, and I currently work with a lot of high-risk populations, including homeless, currently incarcerated, SNAP recipients, youth in county custody, and people with mental health conditions. So I'm really interested in things like the consent decree from Cleveland and other pertinent kind of policies that impact the way that police interact with especially high-risk populations, but generally their relationship with the general public. My baseline feeling about police is general distrust, but that's also comes from like my general belief in the world as like an anti-authority type human being. But I work in administration, and my position is quality improvement coordinator. So I manage surveys, usually around like 400 to 1,000 people a year I'm surveying. And I'm also responsible for our accreditation, compliance, and policies. So I'm familiar with reading policies closely and trying to find evidence-based practices, best practice standards, especially national best practices. And I'm really interested in trauma-informed approaches to create a more loving and supportive community for University Heights.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Next then is Sherry Sachs.
Thank you for having me on this committee. I'm Sherry Sachs. I've lived in the University Heights and Cleveland Heights area since 1980. So it's kind of split down the middle. I have a couple of licenses for different things I've done primarily in healthcare and home care. But the reason that I was very interested in this committee, really interested in general, which I came to the city council meetings before the committee was hatched. And basically, it's very disconcerting to me to see the destruction and the rage. I'd rather see constructive solutions and to be through outrage. I think that's a different approach. And I believe that through outrage and constructive solutions and working together in University Heights, becoming a leader in best practices, we can maybe address all bigotry, including racism, of course. So one of the things that is glaringly missing for me, and I can't believe it's just not part of the national discussion, is to have a registry of offenders. We'll talk about the police force because that's really what we're talking about here, whereby there would be an accountability that's standardized, and when a police officer who is not performing their duties the way they're supposed to be would go through a process that would have them on a registry so that they'd be accountable, they would be off the force, they would not be able to be shuffled around different municipalities, states, the country, and off the police force to avoid these tragic things that we repeatedly see. The other thing that I am very interested in, which was touched upon here, is mentorship. I think the police force can also serve as positive mentors to our youth. So glad we have teachers on this committee who can help us work maybe through those types of things, but not just to have, I mean, random things are wonderful, but perhaps some sort of program that's been tested for reliability and validity, and in order to be able to measure some outcomes and then build upon those best practices. And like it was said, maybe to share with municipalities that are similar size or bigger. I don't see why it couldn't serve as something that could be replicated in other communities, so that people feel, with the ultimate goal of everyone feel protected by the police force, not threatened, and not, the negatives. So I think that University Heights, from what I've had some conversations with the police chief, Rogers, that I found to be very helpful to me in my education about how police business is conducted in University Heights. And I'm confident that with this positive energy that we have sitting here in this Zoom, and the partners in the police and the fire department and the safety services, that we can really look at what we have, really polish up best practices and build upon them so that others, really the goal is for us to be safe here, but for everyone to be safe everywhere in this country. Thank you very much.
Good, very good, thank you, Sherry. Next up then is Mike Sears. Mike. Mike, you have the floor.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to try this on my computer.
Okay.
Even though it keeps going in and out. So hopefully, if it doesn't work, you can let me know and I'll go to my phone. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Thanks,
okay,
Mike.
Great. So I am an 8th grade history teacher at Shaker Heights Middle School. And in fact, I am, what do I go here? I'm taking a book this summer to a book club called All American Boys by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Healy.
So it's actually a book about a boy who was mistakenly accused of stealing from a convenience store and is beaten by a police officer on the sidewalk outside the store. And it's written from the point of view of a white boy who witnesses the act and the boy who ends up in the hospital who's black. So it's an interesting book. It's a great opportunity for middle school students to kind of grapple with these issues through historical fiction. And as I was teaching the book this summer, and then Aaliyah Lawson helped organize the march in University Heights, and I attended that with my 15-year-old son. After attending the march and listening to the speakers, I found out about this committee, and I just thought this is an opportunity to do something locally and just try to see what's happening in University Heights in terms of practices that are making sure that everyone's treated equally and fairly when they interact with the police. And I just thought, you know, that's something I should be involved in and have an opportunity to do this summer and this fall. And it's just really about, you know, doing something to serve my community and try to make things more equitable for everyone who lives here in University Heights. So thank you for including me on the committee.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to be part of it. Vincent Stokes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Reverend Dr. Vincent E. Stokes II. I am a middle school teacher in Cleveland Metropolitan School District. I got on this committee because I, like Fannie Lou Hamer, some 65 years ago, am sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm tired of Black people being mistreated by the hands of police. And I'm tired of reactive policies by city government. So this seemed like it was a proactive way to approach that. Brief background, I've served on a community policing program when I lived in New Haven when I was at Yale Divinity School. And it was a very proactive program, and it did very well in New Haven, Connecticut. So I feel like I can use some of those things to cross-reference in the city of University Heights. So thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you for being here. Priscilla Tate.
Hi, everybody. I'm Priscilla. So I've lived in University Heights for the last 8 years, and I recently purchased a house at the beginning of this year that I'm renovating. So I'm really excited about that. I love University Heights. I have a daughter who is a recent graduate of Cleveland Heights High School and a son who is going to the 8th grade. I've worked in education for the past 10 years in the city of Cleveland. I taught, I was a teacher's assistant, now I'm in administration. And I am excited to be a part of this committee just because with all the unrest taking place in every state and so many people around the world coming together to take a stand, I think that this is just something that I'm excited to offer my perspective as a mother and an educator.
Very good. Thank you. John Weiss.
Hi, my name, excuse me. My name is, I'm Sean Weiss. I lived here in University Heights my entire life. I've been, as a mayor knows, I've been involved in the city for a very, very long time. And I just wanted to join this committee because I am involved with the police department, help them out whenever I can. And I just want to see us work through these use of force tactics use of force policy. And I also would love to see us bring back our DARE program to work with our younger youth and maybe our middle school students, our elementary school students, and then try to work on a program to work with our, along with Cleveland Heights, to work on something along the lines of DARE. So I'm excited to join the committee and try to work through all this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Before we proceed, I want to make sure that Kate Holtzheimer and Constance Jefferson, that I know that, you know, we tried to pick the best date we could from the survey we did, but I want to make sure that we didn't miss them, that they're not here. If they are here, we want to hear from them, of course. Okay. I don't believe I've missed anybody else then. Very good. Anybody else who's here, I believe, is just here observing, and they're welcome to do that. We wanted to treat this as a public meeting so that we didn't have to worry about whether or not we had a quorum of council. And this way, you know, we want to ensure that any discussion we had complied with open meeting law, sunshine law, and not run awry of that. So So there are other folks who may be here that are listening. They're welcome to listen, but the actual participation work of the committee will be done by the committee members that have been appointed, the citizenry, as well as the ex officio members, members of council, our prosecutor, representatives of the police department who are here with us. So thank you all. Thank you all for being here. We'll move on then to the new business portion of the meeting. There are several bullet points, which some of which I think will probably be, we could take them in order, but I think some of these things are going to overlap. If you look at the agenda, and I hope everybody has it. If you don't, if you go to universityheights.com/citizen committees, you will find our agenda there at that location, and future agendas for this committee will also be posted there. So that's universityheights.com/citizen committees. So I think one of the key questions that we should discuss is how exactly we should go about reviewing the police's use of force policy. I mean, obviously we have this committee, and probably taken together with that, how should we then collect public input? On one hand, you're all members of the public, and you can provide that input at this level. Should we also be seeking input generally from the rest of the public, and including people who live in the city and or people who have had interactions with our police department?
Just a couple of things, Mayor.
Yes, Paul.
In regards to the first one, first of all, I think all of us should have a written copy of policing policy that exists before we review it. We don't know what we're talking about to begin with.
Now, I did send out 2 general orders which cover the use of force policy. I hope everybody got it. Paul, did you not get it?
No, I didn't get it. So
that's fine. That's fine. I mean, because I didn't expect us to delve into it deeply here really at all. This is the organizational meeting, so it's a lot about just setting up the groundwork, getting to know each other. So we can resend that to you. I will also tell you that that we have and already had in the works a possible update for those policies, which we didn't send out because I didn't want to throw too much information at you at once. I wanted to send you the existing policies first so that you could take a look at those because they are extensive. And we have a subscription service to a service called Lexipol, which is a service that our police chief and our council and I agreed would be a good service for the city to have to help the police in general update their policies so that they were up to date with current practices, up to date with developments in case law, and so on. But that said, though we have this service that we refer to and the draft new use of force policies are based upon that, that doesn't mean that we are necessarily bound to simply adopt what the service recommends. Quite the opposite. I think it's important, especially at this point in review of our policies and at this point in review of the role of police, that we take a fresh look as citizens as to what we want our police department to be doing and what is appropriate. So so that said, anybody besides Paul not get the 2 general orders?
I didn't see them attached to the email. I scrolled down. Maybe they were there. I didn't see them.
Well, they were sent separately from the agenda on
I know.
Monday. Okay. All right. So we'll make sure that you get them. All right. Okay. So that said, everybody should then get those and should read them. And presumably at the next meeting, we would want to perhaps share and talk about, what we've seen. Is that fair?
I have a question.
Yes, Neil.
And that's, I did receive these and I did look them over and it raised something in my mind, wondering, what are we really trying to accomplish? And I'd like to know, are we trying to correct grammatical errors and structural issues? Or are we actually trying to modify this document in some way? And if we're trying to do that, given the range of interests that I hear in this group, we're going to need a lot of input from those who have to deal with the consequences of that. We have to know what the issues are related to the language that's used. That came from the Graham versus Connor decisions and whatnot. And I would like to know if that's what we're really trying to do. I'd really like to have a period of time spent where somebody's going to explain some of this to us so we're all on the same page.
You know, that's an interesting point, because I was thinking in terms of, are we going to look into, for instance, recruitment of police, having psychological tests done? Are we going to do anything of that nature even before a policeman gets on a force at University Heights? Are we going to look into that aspect of it, or is it we just going to look into the policing aspect? How?
That was part of my whole thing, is I think there, at some point, there needs to be a registry. So you can look back at a person's employment history and they can put on whatever police force they were on, but maybe omit something that wasn't complimentary, and you would never know without a registry. I mean, and the other thing to Mr. Gould's point is it would be helpful to have someone, maybe Chief Rogers or someone, who can interpret some of that for us, because if we all come to, you know, there's 25 of us and we come to 25 different types of interpretation of what we're reading, I think we do need to know what does this mean in police language, so that we can really make an educated contribution to improvement if it's needed.
I don't have an answer to that. I just wanted to kind of focus on the structure before I forget about it, about how we should collect that public input and who needs to be at the table, which stakeholders are in this conversation. So I think that what you guys are saying is really important about being educated about what we're talking about, speaking to what kind of information we need, what kind of background we need to understand the position of the police officers and how they feel about the current policy and other conversations going on right now and other policy alternatives. After reading our policies, I also looked around for, research and other example policies from around the country. So I've read like 3 other example policies thus far. And there were a number of things that were different from our policy than the examples or the best practices that were established by these other kind of research bodies. So I think that it would be interesting to collect, to have like focus groups, especially a focus group of the police, and to be able to aggregate that feedback from, people who have interacted with the police, separate from the conversation with the police officers, separate from counsel, separate from law, lawyers or judges, other people who are involved in the system, to see which kinds of policies could be adopted. And also, I think an important part of this goal towards more transparency and any effective policy is to really have a focus, additionally, besides just the written policy, on the training beforehand and the data and transparency of the data afterwards. So for example, it mentions in our policy, hi Ronnie, it mentions in our policy that a written report is submitted and there's an annual analysis of that information, but it doesn't say who that information is shared with after the fact. So just to make sure, just to see exactly what's going on with our data and what data we already collect, so we can collect a baseline, and then what our goal would be in the future in regards to what our outcomes, as you mentioned, Mrs. Sachs, what outcomes we're hoping to achieve, which data we need to look at historically, and what we want to collect in the future. I think that's really important to include in our conversation. Sorry for talking so much.
Yeah,
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Why don't we let Aaliyah speak next? Yes, Aaliyah.
Yeah, so just based off of the 2 points, for the first one, I think I agree with Paul in that we need to get some education more on what these policies actually mean. So I think that should be our next meeting's focus, is really sitting with the chief and all their officers and kind of like making sure we all are on the same page with the policy and what it means. And then after that point, I haven't completely read the policy, but I know that I think it's 22 sections. And so I think we can break it down that way, a couple of sections, and give it to different groups throughout this committee, that they can look at those policies in particular in more depth, and then we can move forward with that. And I like the idea that Krista brought up of like looking at examples for like inspiration, or like we do want this and we don't want this and things like that for our own community. And so I think that's a good way to do it. And then for the second part, as a 21-year-old, I like the internet and I like social media and things like that. And so I think, at least in my standpoint, we should definitely go that route, especially with it being a pandemic, and still finding a way to make it accessible to people who don't necessarily like the internet too much. And so there's a way that we can kind of go around or like share like a QR code to surveys that people can fill out really quickly, so that we can gather data as we see fit when we come up with more questions about how we're moving forward. And I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, very good. Paul, I know you were anxious to get.
Yeah, no, I was just a quick question. Is it possible for any of us to ride along with a policeman for a couple of hours? Is that a possibility?
Those sorts of opportunities have existed. I'm not sure with the current pandemic situation whether we've been doing that. I don't, but that's something we can explore, perhaps.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I know not everybody's had an opportunity. Well, okay. How about Odesha? Why don't you go ahead? Yes.
Just going to say, I think some guiding questions would be helpful as well, just to kind of help us think about what lens or what frame we need to be approaching these policies from, because as a lot of us said, we don't have background knowledge in it. So my brain could be somewhere completely off from where we're trying to go. So I think some guiding questions as we're looking at the policies may be beneficial. And I think data is also very beneficial. I don't know if we can get data on how deadly force has been used in the past 5 years in the community, or even just data in general about the police force, like what's the percentage of minorities versus white people getting pulled over, or whatever the case may be. Any data that may assist us moving forward and looking at the policies from the past, I think, as Aaliyah said, would be very helpful.
I just want to know, is there like a way we can find, going off piggyback what she said, you know, have they used force on anyone in the last 10, 20, 30 years? It doesn't have to be guns. It has to be like tasers or billy clubs or rubber bullets, because that's according to, I was able to skim it a little bit at lunch today of the use of force policy, and I'm pretty aware that it doesn't have to be guns. It has to be like using force, like a billy club or, you know, rubber bullets. So I just want to know if there's a way we can get the statistics on how often the city police has used it.
Yes, we should be able to get you some of that information. Yes.
And I'll just say that I like what everyone has said so far about the two questions on the table, and I'll just kind of add, maybe doing some kind of demographic research as far as input from the public, because perhaps certain generations will be more able to give us that input via social media or other electronic formats. And I don't know, perhaps sending something through the mail to other demographics or other populations, because that's more accessible to them. I don't know, but I like that, and I like that Aaliyah mentioned a QR code, some kind of code, so that so if when these surveys or whatever form they take are being filled out, there's no risk of ballot stuffing. Just kind of make it unique. And then on the question of reviewing the policy, obviously actually reviewing it and understanding it as best we all can. And then, as it's already been stated by Crystal and others, finding a good model of a use of force policy. It's like, ideally, here's what a use of force policy should be, based on data, based on evidence, et cetera, what does University Heights Police Department use of force policy look like compared to that model or compared to other very good models? That just seems obvious to me, and I just wanted to reiterate that.
Okay.
Agreed.
Very good. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Sean. All right. So as a matter of goal setting and as a matter of direction we may go, it seems like the trend that we're hearing, and I know we haven't heard from everybody, but and I don't want to shut anyone out, of course, is that we should make a goal perhaps at the next meeting of having the police department and or the prosecutor give an explanation as to the current use of force policy. I mean, obviously, even with the policies in writing in front of you, there's the practical application of what they actually mean. So talking through those policies and giving a presentation as to what the policies currently are and the significance of them would seem to be helpful for this committee. Would people tend to agree?
Absolutely.
As well as what was mentioned, data from the past, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, however far back you want to go.
And I know that Chief Rogers has prepared a memo with regard to past use of force, which he just completed. So this is something that can be forwarded on. I don't think it goes back 5 years. I know it goes back at least the last 2, but we can see what else is available. But the last 2 years, that memo is something we can get out to in very short order. So that's something that we can share. Also, we can share with you model language from Lexapol, rather, for what they recommend for having as a use of force policy, which is a standardized service that police departments subscribe to, including now University Heights Police Department, something that this council and I and this police chief, Chief Rogers, sought out to do and did beginning I want to say in late 2017, early 2018. So, or I'm sorry, late 2018, early 2019. And but we can get those to you as well to look at. So I don't want to throw too much at you at once, but at the same time, we want to hit the ground and get going on those things.
Mayor,
yeah.
It's Patty. Can I ask you another question? I definitely want to hear from our folks within the community as far as helping us interpret what our policy says and then how that translates into the field. But if it's at all possible, if like somebody knows a guy who could offer like a third party perspective of here is the best practice, because I appreciate finding, the different comparative ones. But if anyone else is like me, like you find something online and you're like, I think this is good. I don't know, what skirt do I buy? Like sometimes it's nice to have someone be able to tell you, okay, here's the criteria that will make this the best you possibly can have. And I sort of, because we're all kind of in a education state, and because people in University Heights, who are employed by the city have a vested interest in, the policy maybe being advantageous one way or the other. I wonder if a third party might not be, at least, like a 10-minute weigh-in would be helpful at some point. It may be.
That as we go through this, that we would find that would be helpful. I mean, something that I, should be stressed is I've said this in other contexts, but not necessarily here tonight. That we believe we have an excellent police force, and that we believe that there's always room for improvement, however, and that we are doing this because we believe that we want to be conscientious about what we do here as a city and as a police agency, and there's good reason to think that we have a good policy in place, or even a better policy potentially to implement, but we wanted to go through this process, and we wanted to do it at a point where there's a national understanding of a problem, even if we haven't necessarily had that problem be realized here. And it may be, and we don't necessarily know, is it because we are that good and we're exceptional in some way, or are we just fortunate? you know, but we don't have to find out, we don't have to wait for something bad to happen to make that decision. We can review our policies and see if we're doing the right things now.
Mayor,
Yes.
just a quick question. What is the end game? So at the end of 3 months or 4 months, what is the end game in relationship? Is it to produce a policy? And what happens after that?
Well, I don't know that the committee necessarily has to draft a policy as much as it would want to make a recommendation as to any changes or anything it would like to see in the policy. Because, you know, I don't expect people to necessarily get their pens out and start writing out in longhand what the policy should be and drafting the policy. That's something, you know, for the lawyers to do. I mean,
Are you asking what are the objectives of this committee?
Right, in essence it's also is the end game. I don't expect people to write it out, but once we come up with recommendations, what happens after that point?
Well,
what would be the next step after that?
Okay, well, that's some of the things that were brought up by Councilwoman Berry. There are other issues that could be appropriate for this committee to decide. And also, one of the bullet points under the new business is other matters might this committee or another committee like it or subcommittees of this committee consider after or besides a review of the use of force policy. We wanted to leave this open. You know, if we find that we're a good group that are covering some good ground and there's some things that we want to and there's more that we want to do than just review the use of force policy. At a bare minimum, I want to get through that. But there are other things that I feel like we ought to, there are other things that we may want to discuss. And I know Sandra Berry, our councilwoman who signed the letter with the 8 points.
Those were the 8 points that I was, I brought up that the councilwoman, we came up with 8 points and we wanted to share that with you as well. You can look at them. You might feel like University Heights doesn't need to address all of them. University Heights might just look at some of them, you know, but we feel like we didn't want to make the goal of this committee too massive because it would be a project that would be just too hard to control. So I felt that if we just started with the use of force policy for University Heights and say, well, look at it, see if it looks like it needs improvement. Do you have some recommendations? Would you like to tell the police officer, because you have to remember police officers work in the police world, but they don't necessarily understand, you know, how they can improve how they communicate to their community through their policies and some of the other things that they can do to, you know, to make this a better community and have a better relationship with our law enforcement. We have 8 other points that this committee could look at, but, you know, we want to take it one step at a time because it's just too much to try to control. There are 29 people on this committee. It can really be broken down into smaller groups where you look at the area that is most important to you and I'm just so excited about the talent that I've heard on this committee in the directions that we could go to make this a better community, and we're working together in making University Heights that better community. And you might not want to look at all 8 points. You might want, but you might, you know, and see how University Heights measures up. And so, you know, and I'm just excited about where we can go with this. Especially, I love the idea of a registry, but we might not be able to make that registry happen right here in University Heights, but we can come together and try to get together with other communities and make sure that that becomes a national or a state level initiative
to have a registry for our police right here in the state of Ohio, you know, and there's enough people on this committee that we could really make an impact on. I like the saying of the guy from the West Side. What was his name? You know, a small town can make a big impact, a statement. And I just feel like that's what we can do here in University Heights.
Madam Councilwoman and Mayor, if I could make a suggestion for just a moment.
Sure
hello to the council. I'm Stephanie Scalise. I'm your prosecutor. I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for letting me be involved with this committee. I'm really excited about it. And I'm so happy to see all of these very diverse people who have such good intentions, and nothing makes me happier than working for a place where everybody says, I love living here. Based on just what I've observed so far and what I've heard, I might suggest to this committee that you might want to start out as a fact-finding mission to say we want to all have the same information before we start setting goals. My thought is that if you conduct yourself as a fact-finding committee first, then your goals might be more clear as you start doing.
That's a wonderful idea to me. I don't know how other people feel about it.
I agree.
If I could maybe add something to what Stephanie said, I feel like the first fact finding is for everyone to read the current use of force policies. I know some people haven't even read them yet. I haven't read them. Some people didn't receive them. And then, you know, maybe as we're reading them, make a list of questions or concerns or things we don't understand. And then at the next meeting, whether it's Chief Rogers or Mayor Brennan or an expert, someone kind of answer our questions and make sure we have a good grasp of the current policies, why they're in place, and really understand what the current policy is before we start suggesting, you know, changes or additions or deletions. Also, I kind of wanted to ask the mayor, when you mentioned that database, I forgot what it was called, and you said Lexipol. There were some changes already in the works, perhaps before, maybe, I don't know if it was last spring or earlier this summer, some changes that maybe were going to be made to this use of force policy anyway. You just had sent us the changes because you didn't want to overwhelm us. Was there some reason that the city was looking at making these changes, or the police department? Had anything happened, or was it just kind of every 5 years we review this, or every 3 years we review this? I mean, what kind of sparked taking a look at that was my question.
Well, I think, and maybe Lieutenant McCarter or Chief Rogers, if he were here, could answer this more fully. But part of it is because we as a city desired to subscribe to this service, we had begun a review of all of our policies to make sure that they were current and that they reflected that they were up to date. And use of force was just one of several policies which we were doing that. And it is one that is up now. That said, I don't know, Lieutenant McCarter, do you have anything to add to that you could share?
The general concept of the Lexipols, what they do is they take our policies and then they compare it to what they break it down into 3 different versions. It's what we have to abide by through federal law, what we have to abide by through state law, and then what they do is they put suggestions in there for best practice. And our policies are broken down in those 3 categories. It helps us understand a little bit better about what we need to do, and then what we need to improve to do with what we currently have. The policies that we currently have were developed by Chief Hammett back in 2016, and those are the guidelines that our department follows right now. As the mayor said, we are transitioning to the Lexipol policies, which is an even greater improvement to what we currently have.
I mean, historically, there were a lot of things that weren't ever really reduced to policy, and Chief Hammett did a lot to professionalize that, as I understand.
If I may add, Mayor, I'm sorry, interrupt. Prior to 2016, when Chief Hammett did a tremendous job, and it was a huge undertaking to improve our policies. A lot of our policies were dated from 1989, 86, and 84. So it was a huge undertaking, and we have dramatically improved our policies in a general sense, not just use of force, but in a general sense since 2016.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that. The historic angle I thought was important to bring up. So thank you for filling that in. Neil, looks like
I have a suggestion and a question.
Yes.
The suggestion is that when I was looking over these documents, because I did receive them, I would recommend that someone download and read the Graham versus Connor case. Wikipedia has a very brief overview of it, which is only a couple of pages long. And since most of the language that's used in our use of force documents are based on that document, based on that case, I think it would be good to be familiar with it. It makes it easier, and it's not that much reading to do. And the question that I have is, do we have any policies regarding de-escalation of an interaction? And that I guess, I'm sorry, but your name only shows up as Mac on here, on my screen. But
yes, it's Lieutenant McCarter.
McCarter, okay. He may be able to answer whether we have any documents regarding a de-escalation practice.
In the policies from 2016, there isn't a specific policy to address de-escalation. There is this de-escalation techniques and suggestions within the two policies that you have received. So for example, in the use of force policy, there may be a paragraph or an explanation that encourages the officer that de-escalation or a withdrawal is an option that the police officers have the ability to use. So it's addressed in the two policies that that were sent to you.
Okay,
Is there
so
a
it's
formal
incorporated
training
within the
module?
policy. Excuse me?
Is there a formal training module? Is there a specific model of de-escalation that you guys are trained in?
What's outlined in the policy is basically, you know, you can, one of the duties is to retreat, to have other officers present, a physical presence, but there is a paragraph for de-escalation techniques that suggestions for officers to follow.
But is there when I was at Belfair, we had annual de-escalation training called trauma and crisis intervention, traumatic crisis intervention or something. And at the shelter at 2100, we have, we use PRT, handle with care. So there's a different type of hold and a different type of de-escalation. And I know in schools, they often use the CIT or CPI, what is it called?
CIT.
Yeah, is there a specific model that our police department is trained in for physical de-escalation or physical restraint besides?
Yeah, I think it requires more than a paragraph. I once wrote a grant with a de-escalation technique that our agency created. And so there are some models out there that are pretty simple to follow through, but they need a specific, and I don't mean simple, I don't want to dumb it down, but there's a way to train the officers to, by association and acronym, be able to really have a good, clear concept of when a de-escalation technique would be appropriate and effective for people with mental illness, for people with, you know, that are in having some other traumas that are not necessarily criminal or psychopathic. And they're out there. I could even help, or maybe Ms. Pincus can help look at those.
I've been trained in 2 of them. I've been in lots of restraints. I'm only 4'9". I'm a very small person. It's kind of absurd. But
I just have one little comment. I suggest that to everyone There's a book out, the latest by Malcolm Gladwell. I'm sorry, I forget the author. And I recommend it strongly, really highly, in regards to what we're about to undertake. You get a real good picture of what goes through the mind of a policeman and what goes through the mind of the person who he's talking to. It's really quite educational. I think would help us a great deal. That's
You
my
said that was
recommendation.
called The Latest by Malcolm Gladwell?
You've got it.
Okay.
It's called The Latest, or it's called something, Talking to Strangers or something?
Talking to Strangers. You got it. That's exactly right.
I had other two suggestions about our format, because I've noticed that there are a number of people who haven't really participated yet, and they're here for a reason. I wondered if we could, one, use the chat function, or if that would be a problem with our like official functioning. I know that this is a recorded meeting, but I know that sometimes if people don't have a chance to talk, they could still contribute if we can see what they want to say. And other feedback mechanisms, I don't know if like a reply all on an email would be appropriate with this group or something like that. And then also, just because I'm always nervous about timelines, if we could have some focus or for next time about like deliverables or objectives kind of, or like, what is it called? Focus questions, something like that, that everybody's kind of been talking about. If we could have an email with maybe 3 or one goal of some sort of a deliverable or an objective, whether it's a list of policy suggestions or a body of research or feedback from the community or all 3, that would be cool.
Okay.
To add on to that real quick.
Could I say something?
Oh, sure. We'll go with Adrian, then Patty.
Quiet because I think we have a lot of people on the committee, too many voices. I think that for next time, we're supposed to go through and look at these policies, but each one of them have like 14 or 15 sections. I think to narrow it down to say we're going to discuss the first 5 in General Order 130 next week would be more realistic than saying, let's everybody read all the policies and then we just start throwing our ideas out, because otherwise we'll never get anything accomplished if we want to go through these policies, because there's a lot to do to just say to read them. We need to have a focus on what we're going to discuss every meeting, and then I think we'll get more input from everyone involved.
Adrian, how long is the policy?
General Order 130 has 14 sections as with an appendix, and General Order 131 has 8. They're not small sections, so there's a lot to it. So, you know, it's 16 pages and one is 4 pages. So just to say, read over and then we'll discuss what we're gonna do, we need to focus in on sections of it, I believe, at a time.
All right, Patty, I know that you were waiting to.
Yeah, it was mostly just to piggyback on kind of the reply all, or what the procedure of communication is. I think with so many of us and with maybe things not getting sent or received by everyone, I wonder if it's worth having a conversation about like folders either on the website that are password protected or a Google Doc. So if we're going to do fact finding, we can share it and it lives in one place and we don't have to try to figure out what email. So I just wanted to make that suggestion. I don't know what we are bound to do and what we need to worry about that way, but I just think it's worth having one place where everyone can go.
No, I think that's right. And while, you know, I did email out 130 and 131, I was thinking as we were sitting here that we should either put up on the website or put in a shared folder like Google Docs or Dropbox or something, a place where all the documents that are. So we can send you an email saying, you know, it's attached, but also they're centrally located here. And then you can refer to them there as well. And then, you know, if you're not inclined to save those items to your machine or what have you, you know that if you log on in over here, you'll find everything. It does sound like you know, that what we ought to be doing here is if I'm hearing, you know, the general gist of things, is that we have some time to look over the document, get a presentation on what the significance of the current use of force policy is. Stephanie had mentioned, being in the role of fact finding. So basically, in the beginning here, before we set our goals and decide, where we're going, we should, take this dive together to review the policies, get a presentation, hear what the current state of things are, and then from there discuss where we want to go with it.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds like what I was thinking, the next meeting. Do you think the chief could come to that meeting? Or?
Probably.
I believe the chief is expected back in August, August 8th is my memory.
Well, he was going to take 2 weeks leave for
maternity.
Thank you. Yes. Family leave, but he's also told me that he could make himself available perhaps sooner, given our desire to keep this process moving. So one of the things that among the things we can discuss, if that's the direction we want to go, is coming up with a schedule, such as when do we want to meet next. And some of the other items we had on here were we want to set out a calendar now. Do we do it a meeting at a time? Are Wednesdays generally good? Do we make a point on Wednesday nights? And then how do you want these meetings chaired? I kind of took over here today. I tend to do that, but it doesn't have to be me. It could be Councilwoman Berry. It could be one of you. If there is a sense, I tried to take the role as a facilitator and not just control the conversation, but in my role as facilitator, I don't have to be the one that holds the gavel, if you will. So if there's any thoughts on that.
How do I get to talk? Do you know? Am I talking?
You're talking now, Sheila.
Yes.
Oh,
You're
good.
talking, Sheila. We hear you.
Okay.
Sheila, I can hear you loud and clear.
So Paul and Susan and maybe somebody else, we're all part of that charter review committee. That it had a lot of faults with it. And one fault was they picked their chairman the very first night before people got to know each other, and it turned out he was a terrible chairman. He delayed, he had his personal agenda, and he delayed the proceedings, always trying to get back to his personal agenda. So I'm not inclined to pick a chairman tonight, but if everybody wants to, I'll go with it, of course. But we should be watched. We should be careful. Thank you.
And that might be a good idea. Maybe, Mayor, for the next meeting, before people can get to know each other and kind of come up with, because I've heard a lot of good suggestions here, but it's a lot. And I wanted to stay controllable so that we come up with a good document. So I think the next meeting, probably you should go ahead and chair by bringing hopefully the chief, although we understand that he's a new father. If not, maybe he can, the lieutenant, is it lieutenant that's here?
Lieutenant McCarty.
McCarty.
Yes,
you feel comfortable if the chief can't make it?
sure, that would not be a problem.
Okay.
I have no new children either.
Okay.
We'll become your children.
I'd just like to make a suggestion. Since it was Councilwoman Berry's idea to get this committee together, I think it would be wonderful if she actually chaired the entire committee. However, the beauty of Zoom is that you can make a breakout rooms. So I think if we all come to consensus on a few different points that we want to research and discuss, we can do breakout rooms of 4 to 5 people, even 6, and then each of those breakouts can choose their own leader, and then the leaders can come back, you know, and report, and then we can have consensus on whatever those certain points are and go from there. So that's just my suggestion.
Good. Thank you. That has some potential too. Mrs. Berry?
Either one is okay with me, you know. That was a good suggestion too, because we want to make it controllable, and sometimes a group this large, it's going to be hard, but to have breakout rooms probably would be good, would allow people to get to know one another.
Okay.
My initial vote would also be for Barry, but I think that it's really wise, like Sheila said, to wait a second and figure out exactly the group dynamics before we establish that as fact. And I also, before I go, I really wanted to comment on Adrian's artwork behind her, that I really love it. And I know that that's not germane at all, but I can't get over it.
Thank you. That's my art. That's what I did. I started painting when I retired.
Oh, okay. Beautiful.
Very good choice. Stunning.
All right.
So when
So
would be the
maybe
next
we need
meeting?
to check with the chief or the lieutenant on their availability, and we'd be able to get some dates and send out a doodle. Will that work?
We could do that, or we could pencil in a week from today.
Right.
And provide
Right.
that works for Lieutenant McCarter and or Chief Rogers. Then we could, you know, unless there's some reason that neither of them would be available, I think we would, you know, do well to take the week to look over the policies. They can prepare a presentation, they can speak, and then we can discuss what we've heard.
That'd be great.
Agreed.
And Megan, you're going to send out the policies again?
Yes, I will do that.
Great.
Is there
Sounds
a
good.
way to get a shared document online really soon so that we can start writing notes or questions? I know that I reviewed some of the policies already and have a list already that I'd like to fact find. And I think that might make it more efficient as well if some of us are doing that before the next meeting.
Okay, yeah, I think we can do something like that. I can talk with, well, my assistant Rachel, I think, is still on the call. I'm terrible. I didn't introduce her. I'm so sorry. But Rachel is or was here. She and I can work on that tomorrow, and which is really my way of saying she'll work on it tomorrow. And then we'll get that out to everybody. Do people have a preferred format, whether it's Dropbox, Google Docs?
Google Docs would work.
Google.
Google? Okay.
Google Docs.
Okay. All right. Okay. Because I go with the flow on that. Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay. So I know that there are a lot of us here. I want people to feel that they got their opportunity to say anything. Is there anything that anybody'd like to bring up that we haven't covered, or that we did cover but you didn't get to quite have your piece on? Okay. All right. Well, it looks like then we'll meet next Wednesday at 6 o'clock again. We'll have some information out to you tomorrow. It'll be Wednesday next week, barring, unless for some reason Lieutenant McCarter and or Chief Rogers wouldn't be available. And is there any other business?
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for contributing and being respectful.
Yeah, so do I.
And I just want to thank all of you for joining the committee. I'm very excited with everybody that I have got a chance to meet today. And I just feel like we're going to make University Heights proud.
Very good.
Agreed.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Especially
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilperson Barry
Jill,
for
good seeing you.
making this a thing.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right.
It would seem then that we are adjourned. We'll see you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See everybody next week, 6 o'clock.
Patty, are you
Thank
still
you.
here? Patty, are you here?